This is Danny with ANRV Adventure, and I'm coming to you from San Cristobal, Chiapas, Mexico. This is our new home for the next couple of months, so we're going to be doing a lot of exploring around here. Stay tuned for that. But we just wrapped up with a really cool conference down in Acapulco called Anarchapulco, and I was able to talk with Curtis Stone, who is kind of a guru with homestead farming and all these other different types of things. Some great information. I'm not allowed to share the whole video, but I've got about 15 minutes of it for you. It's an hour-long video. If you want to get the rest, go to anarchapulco.com. I will leave a link down below where you can get a hold of that, and you can purchase the replays of not only that interview, but also multiple other talks throughout a 5-day conference. That is anarchapulco.com. Look for the link down below, and my coupon code is crypto.
And I and Jonna here, who's up in the front row, are on a quest for a homestead. We don't plan on stopping travel, so we've been traveling for 5+ years for Jonna and over 7 years for myself. That we've been homeless vagabonds, basically just traveling all around Mexico and the U.S. And the whole time we're in search of where is our homestead? How are we going to do this? You know, we've got all these ideas. We're going to make an RV park, a tiny house village or something that would sustain us while we're still able to build our garden and, you know, build a house the way we want it and then just experiment and do all these different things. You're somewhat of an expert in this. So, Curtis, tell me about yourself and how you got started in this, and where you're located and everything.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And yeah, it's become finding homestead properties has literally become my kind of niche that I've been. When I started my career, as far as people know me, I started making YouTube videos 10 years ago about my urban farm, and that's how I got internationally recognized. Had a book that was a bestseller. Had a launched the first online course platform in the whole vertical of sustainable agriculture. Call it small scale farming, and those things essentially set me on a path of being sort of I could be a laptop entrepreneur. I didn't have to even be on my farm, and so it allowed me to do a lot of things. And yeah, so people know me for small scale farming. I kind of pioneered, helped pioneer. I didn't make the whole thing up by any means, but I improved on and developed methodology that had existed, stemming from a system of agriculture called biointensive, and then later became known as French intensive market gardening. Actually, French intensive was first, then biointensive, and then I kind of brought my little niche in and showed people how to do a very profitable business model on like a quarter acre of land, selling to grocery stores, high end restaurants, farmers markets, etc. And I did that because I always wanted to be a homesteader, but I had no money and I had no rich parents and I still had student debt. And so I found a way I could cash flow a business while learning the skills to farm so that when the time came that I had some resources, that I could just go out and crush it. And that's kind of what I'm doing now. And now I'm on a large acreage in southern BC, Canada, and we're a zone 4 boreal climate. So we're in the softwood boreal region of Canada. Beautiful country, fire country. That's our biggest risk. But we're very rural and we're very out of the way, and we're totally off grid. So we 20 kilowatts of solar. We've got a 13 kilowatt generator, and we grow most of our own food. In a couple of years of developing, we'll probably be near to 95% of our own food. Probably, you still need to buy some things here and there, and the systems improve as you go. We've got multiple sources of water. We pretty much have everything we need to just like close the gates and wait for the dust to settle, if you will. But yeah, I've been on a mission for about a year now. A year ago, I developed a new online course to show people how to read the landscape. So it'd be for people like you who want to find property but don't really know what to look for. Like, sure, you understand the house. You said you were a construction guy. You get the house and all that, but do you understand where the water flows? Do you understand what the implication of certain trees are on the property? Do you understand if you pull the lens back and you look around at your neighbor's places, what's going on there and how that might affect you? And so I use a process called the 11 scales of permanence, where we go and analyze a property based on 11 criteria, starting at climate, geography, water, access, socioeconomics, a bunch of stuff, soil, going through all these things. And we try to educate people on making the right decision, because a lot of people want to get on the land and homestead like you. But I've seen in my consulting practice for many years, that's how I kind of got into this, is people would just hire me to review properties. And I said, well, why don't I just outsource this information and people can do it themselves? And so that's what we do. But a lot of people buy a piece of property and they miss one thing that costs them significantly, where the property just they didn't notice they were in a flood zone, or they didn't notice that they couldn't get water, or whatever it could be. The soil is terrible. And so what we do now is we review properties for people. We publish a listing we have a listing directory at freedomfarmers.com, and we publish real estate listings that I fully evaluate with my team, taking them through this process. And so we basically get people like 99% of the way by giving them properties that are available for sale. And we don't make any money in the trade. We just charge for the service. And people get in there and it's everything they need: food, water, energy, shelter. It's all there. And so that's kind of, really summated where I started and what I'm doing now.
So you can evaluate, like for instance, I want to have several tiny homes in an RV park, so I need to know how much water do I need, and
Yes.
where is my sewage going to go? How
That's
am I
right.
going to deal with this? I went. We were in Washington last year, and I went with Ernie up to some compound, and they're using a lot of these methods from this guy Joel Salatin.
Oh yeah, I know
Yeah.
Joel. He's a personal friend.
What is this beyond organic idea? And can you kind of explain his ideas of how he regenerates the soil,
Yes.
and eliminating the weak plants and keeping the strong plants? And
Yeah, so this is a school of agriculture called regenerative agriculture, and it came out of permaculture, which was a broad term developed by two men, Bill Mollison and David Holmgren, and they came up with some foundational principles on how you can design landscapes based on observations in nature. So, and every design is rooted in the context of the place and the nuance of the place. So the specifics of the plant, the specifics of all the flora and fauna, and seizing the opportunities and eliminating the threats. And it's a lot of front end work to establish the system, but the idea is that when the systems are in place, they self-replicate and do what nature does naturally. And so regenerative agriculture was another school, and another school that comes out of that is called silvopasture, where a lot of big farmers, particularly ranchers, were looking at how could we use systems, ideas that exist in permaculture, but make it a productive farm that's also profitable. And a gentleman named Alan Savory developed a term called holistic land management. And all these kind of things came together, and a bunch of just practitioners like Joel Salatin and Darren Doherty, to name a few, started putting this stuff into practice and having huge success. I mean, Joel Salatin's farm is world renowned, and if you go to his farm, what you'll see, he's in Virginia, what you'll see is that the grass is so green, it doesn't need to be irrigated. He doesn't reseed the grass. He has a very specific pattern in which the cows and any of the other pasture animals move around. His farm, Polyface Farm, does all the animals: chickens for meat, layers, turkeys, all kinds of birds, pigs on pasture. And there's a system the way animals follow around. So after the cows are on an area, the chickens come in and they pick through the manure and they pick through all the worms, the bad worms, and the soil explodes. And so here you have this profitable farm that's making a very healthy, like nutritionally dense product, and the farm is a utopia of the best mix of agriculture and nature.
yeah, they were explaining to me how the animals actually did all of the work for them.
They do.
Because when they fed the cows, as you talked about, it wasn't just the chickens that did it. They would bury kernels of corn, corn feed on the floor when the cows ate, or on the ground. And then they would put more mulch or whatever on top of that, and then just keep layering it like that. And then they would turn the pigs loose, and the pigs
Yes.
would go after the corn down at the bottom. So they did all of the rooting and turned the
Yes.
mulch over and made the compost into this great soil.
Yeah.
So those were really interesting ideas that I'd seen that. How do you decide like what crops that you want to grow in what region?
It depends on the market, really. It all depends on the market, and it depends on the value of that crop in the market. So, one thing I tell people is, you're going to come down to Mexico and you want to start a farm, if you want to try to have a living standard that's similar to what you had in North America, you pretty much just have to grow high value stuff and sell it to other white people who, who are down here, because farming in Mexico isn't profitable for farmers, and it's quite looked down on in the culture, frankly. Um, and so it's all about place. So it just depends on where you were. You know, in my situation, I was starting a small farm on a quarter acre of land, which is very small. It's, you know, this area here might be a half acre. A quarter acre is, you know, half of that. And so people would say, well, how the hell do you make money on that much land when farmers that are making money have hundreds of acres, if not thousands of acres? And what it comes down to is that I'm custom growing for a niche market where I have customers and I go direct to the customer, so I get all the profit. And so it was growing a lot of high value vegetables that are also quick turnaround. So, for example, growing salad greens, like a crop like a spinach or arugula, that's a 30-day crop in a normal growing season. Whereas, you know, growing corn in the fields for a commodity market is a commodity price, which is super low, and you need hundreds, if not thousands, of acres to make a profit with all the infrastructure, all the equipment that you need to do that. I'm out here harvesting salad greens with a knife, harvesting them into a bin, and I'm getting $10 a pound and selling them directly to the customer, and it's quite profitable. On one bed, we grew everything on a 30-inch bed, 30 inches wide, 25 feet long. On one bed in a growing season, I could make $1,000 on that bed by having 3 crops in that bed. So spinach, turn it over, put on some compost, radish, harvest, put on some compost, lettuce, boom. That bed had 3 crops and made $1,000 in a season. Price per square foot is extraordinarily high, but it all depends on the market. If you don't have a market that wants to pay for that product, well, you know, as a business person, that's just you can't make money.
So, do you think growing in these small areas, you're probably better off with living soil? I know that the trend now is to go hydroponic or aquaponic or whatever, and go vertical. Like a lot of the greens and stuff are grown in these vertical areas where you're not using very much space. But what is in, you know, the nutrients that you're actually
Yeah,
putting in there? What and being exposed to PVC?
yeah, exactly.
What is?
I'm
Is
not.
there
I'm.
any research on this or?
Oh, well, the devil's in the details, as I say. It depends on the specifics, but generally, I'm not interested in that stuff. I like low tech. I like soil. Um, However, there are applications where, like for example, in the tropics aren't as easy to grow food in as you think. Oh, it's warm, you can grow year round. It's like, yeah, it's warm year round, but the pests never go away, and the soil-borne disease never goes away. And so, you know, in Mexico here, they have a problem with nematodes in the soil, and it actually makes very difficult to grow what Westerners in North America would grow down here. And this is an application where aquaponics makes sense. I prefer aquaponics than hydroponics. Hydroponics is basically just synthetic fertilizers. You can get organic ones, but in my opinion, it's not really good organic farming. But it's as least as organic as you can get, and it's all based on just inputs. You got to buy a fertilizer to grow a crop. Whereas my approach is more, let's build the soil, let's feed the soil a lot on the front end, and less and less and less as we go to get to a point where we have a living soil. And if we're following the right practices and crop rotations, the soil can just keep producing and producing, and I can put nutrients back in the soil, introduce animals. That's more my thing. But you know, these all these systems have their place, but I think it's a fad, and really what it comes down to is, uh, and big billionaire companies love the idea of these urban farms. And when I was doing urban farming and I was speaking at conferences around the world, they loved me because the big billionaire capitalists see this opportunity to make these urban farms on buildings where it's so capital intensive to start that farm. There's no way the average farmer can afford all the infrastructure to do that. So then they can finance them, right, and get them on the drip feed of interest payments, and then just create a new subservient class of farmers, but then get them off the land. And so it actually works very well with the New World Order agenda, is to let's go with real hardcore vertical urban farming, because when you're doing that, you're not on the land. Like there's something about being grounded in the soil. There's something about being in trees and in the environment, the air, right? That's why there's in my opinion, why there's a big push to go to those high technological farms to feed urban centers when they're totally not needed.
Yeah.